Welcome to Generations, a show for people 50 and better. Moderating today is Nadia Giordana.
Hello and welcome to Generations. I'm Nadia Giordana and we have a great show for you today. First, let me introduce my co-hosts. I've got Jeff DeZeller.
Well, hello, I'm Nadia. Very good to be here. Happy to be on the show today.
It's good to have you here today, Jeff.
Well, thank you.
It's always fun. And then Midge Bubani.
Well, I am delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking to our guest.
It's fun having you on the show always.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Ed Noreen.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I have nothing else to do except walk my dog, so this is Dave.
And we have a great guest today. We have David Fink. And David, you are program developer for the Metropolitan Area Agency on Aging. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you here today, too. Let's start with talking about the agency and what that's all about. I hadn't heard of it, so give us a little rundown on that.
Sure. The Metropolitan Area Agency on Aging has been actually in existence since 1973 and works in the 7-county metropolitan area. It is a nonprofit, and the goal really is to help people live as independently as possible, as long as possible. We do work in three main categories. One is information and referral. So you may have heard of the senior linkage line, where people can call for any kind of resources that will help older adults remain in the community. Also, friends, relatives can call, as well as professionals. So it's a great source of resources. And that number is 1-800-333-2433. Then also we have about $8 million in grants that we grant out to organizations in the community. Everything from transportation to chore services, food, grocery delivery, congregate meals, those sorts of things. And then the area that I work in program development, we work in developing programs that support healthy aging. So we work in two areas, falls prevention and chronic disease management.
That sounds, especially the part about how you get people to know about the agency. So family members can call, get information, because I'm thinking it's not necessarily the aging person that always is out there looking for your agency or even knows to call.
Yeah, that's right. It really is a great resource, the senior linkage line, because they're very, very knowledgeable and can connect people with all sorts of different resources. And as you say, it's not, it may be the older adult that's calling, but it may be a friend, relative, or a professional person who may be supporting the person as well.
How big is your organization? How many people work for the organization?
So including all the different areas, we have close to 100 people.
Okay.
And so yeah, we're spread across all those three areas, but primarily the largest area is in the information and referral area, because that's where we do a lot of work in terms of providing folks resources with what they need. Medicare counseling is another big area that they help with, and so it really, in this day and age when we're all trying to figure out what we do now. I'm 65, so I'm thinking about all of these things as well. So I talk about we rather than they when I talk about older adults. But this can be kind of a bewildering set of things that we need to make decisions about, and what insurance do I want, what insurance do I need, what are my options, what resources may I need, and so it's a great resource for all those different kinds of things.
So David, speaking of bewildering, there seems to be a tremendous amount of uncertainty in America about health care and how health care is provided and paid for and so forth and so on. Sort of given that uncertainty, how does that affect your agency's work in terms of providing for seniors?
Well, so far so good. Because we provide some core services, we've certainly had to cut back in the last several years, but been able to hold the line pretty well. And then we're actually growing in some areas as well. So it really depends on the kind of situation, the kind of area that we're working in. But certainly it's an ongoing challenge to make the dollars go as far as they can go. And we partner with a lot of organizations that to do the work, particularly in the area that I work in. The key is the partner organizations out in the community that we work with, Wilder Foundation and Presbyterian Homes and Fairview Health Services and Health East and Lao Advancement Organization of America, just many, many different organizations that we work through to help deliver in these programs that we work with that help folks stay independent.
Okay, so hypothetically, if I was interested in having a person obtain some of the services, perhaps a family member who was going to most likely have to go to a nursing home, would I contact your agency directly or go through the facility, or how does that usually work?
Well, I'd say a great starting place for any of those questions is always a senior linkage line, because they get questions every single day from a variety of different points of view, and they can direct the person. So if you had a question about, geez, I'm thinking about going into independent living, or I'm thinking about, finding a supportive housing situation, you call them and they can direct you to the right person. They may have actually resources to give you, can answer your question specifically, or they may be able to direct you to someone who does. But they're the experts in this area, and they do a fantastic job. And the nice thing is you actually talk to a real person. So you can get on the phone, you can talk to a real person, and they can point you in the right direction, and they're just a wonderful group of people.
David, how did you go in this direction? In fact, we were talking before the show started, and you said as a young person, you've always been interested in older people, retired people.
Well, when I was younger, I had really great grandparents, for one thing, and so they set a model for me. And then I remember when we were in high school, I grew up in Iowa, and my folks and I took a little trip down to Washington, Iowa, and there's a retirement center that was actually way ahead of its time, because they had these small homes. It wasn't an institution at all, but there were these small homes, and people were living there, and I just found that fascinating and interesting. And I remember to this day that there was something that just said, there's something in that. And as I've always told my kids, listen to those things as you're growing up and as you're going through your life, and just sometimes you act on it right away, sometimes you just let it kind of sit there for a while. Well, for me, it sat there for a while, and then when I was did some graduate work at the School of Public Affairs at the university, I had an opportunity to do a paper on what gives people meaning in retirement and what is important to folks. Because at that time, a lot of people were still in the, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to retire, and then I'll be happy. And a lot of folks weren't happy. And so we were looking at the kinds of things that people really did care about that gave meaning to their life. And certainly family, friends, and those sorts of things are important, but there are also, there's an element of contribution that makes a difference. And how am I making a difference to other folks? So I actually ended up going from that graduate program to a program called the Senior Companion Program and the Foster Grandparent Program, which are still operating today. They're wonderful programs, and the Senior Companion Program has older adults who actually go out and spend time with 4 to 5 other older adults who are struggling to stay in their own homes, and they're friendly visitors and help support them in that. And then foster grandparents, it's older adults working with kids with special needs. So as a matter of fact, if you need a topic someday, I would strongly recommend getting some folks from the Senior Companion and Foster Grandparent Program. It's currently sponsored by Lutheran Social Services, but it's really a wonderful program. So I worked with that program for a number of years, and then took a right turn, got a master's degree in business, worked in the corporate world for a while, did technology support and training, and then from that I had my own consulting business for a number of years, kind of combining the nonprofit and the profit. And from that I heard about the Metropolitan Area Agency on Aging, did a project for them, and when this position opened, I said, that's what I want to do now. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
Well, you mentioned family and kind of having things to do in retirement, having a reason to do them, but I think looking at your website and your information from your agency, and this is, I think, obvious, you need good health to be able to do a lot of that stuff, and that, if your health is sort of going down, it will dwarf other interests you have or other things you may want to do. I noticed you are an advocate, I'm going to say this wrong, but Tai Chi Chuan, which sounds like an Asian or an Oriental type of a discipline. I'm a yoga practitioner, and the three keys are strength, flexibility, and balance. And kind of getting a little windy here, but basically I know that that's a big part of your work is the balance aspect in this particular practice. And could you kind of compare and contrast yoga with the Tai Chi Chuan and how they're different from each other or similar to each other? And would you recommend one over the other for a particular situation?
Sure, I'd be glad to talk about that. And kind of the one thing that, as you're speaking, Jeff, talking about the importance of staying as healthy as we can, and wherever we are, engaging ourselves in physical activity, whatever that might be. They say that whatever gets worse with aging gets better with exercise. And so yoga is a wonderful regimen. And it is done oftentimes primarily standing, sometimes on mats, while the Tai Chi Chuan that we do is based on Yang-style Tai Chi, and it's been adapted by Dr. Lee of the Oregon Research Institute as he developed this program that's called Tai Chi Chuan, Moving for Better Balance. And we do, it can be done either standing or seated. We don't do the mats on the floor and that sort of thing, but it is also focused on balance and postural control. And so Dr. Lee has taken traditional Tai Chi and working with physical therapists and other professionals, developed this program that really focuses on balance for older adults. Because I always like to say, let's stay upright and independent. And so I oftentimes will talk about the several programs that we have that focus on falls prevention. I don't generally even talk about falls prevention as much as I talk about let's maintain our independence. One of the key ways to do that is to stay physically active and to work on our balance. And so in this particular case, the Tai Chi Chuan, oftentimes a traditional Tai Chi program is going to be very smooth and very balanced at all times. And what this is different in that Dr. Lee has built in a little bit of extra instability to create stability. So it's in a safe way pushing the limits of stability just enough to get the body to react and then to go back into a stable format. So this is a very active, movement-oriented program, and as I said, it can be adapted for seated or for standing folks as well.
Where would you go to do that?
So we have organizations, as I mentioned before, that we work with throughout the 7-county metro area that offer the program in community centers, senior centers, housing, independent housing, as well as churches, and so really kind of all over the board as far as the kind of different sites that we're in. And once again, you can call the senior linkage line and get information on that, get connected to me and others. There's also a website, the Minnesota Healthy Aging website, that you can click on and click on Find a Class, and we'll list all of the classes there, as well as the other ones that we offer.
You mentioned the 7-county area, so the organization MAAA, that primarily operates in the 7-county metro area, or is there a farther reach?
So we are one of 7 area agencies on aging throughout the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
There are 6 geographic. So you've got Southeast Minnesota and the Southwest Minnesota, the Minnesota River Area Agency on Aging. We've got the Central Minnesota kind of cutting across a swath in the middle. There's the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging up in the Arrowhead area. And then my personal favorite in terms of the name is Land of the Dancing Sky Area Agency on Aging up in the northwest corner. And there's also a tribal, Minnesota Tribal Area Agency on Aging that cuts across several of the area, geographic area agencies as well. So, and the senior linkage line, which is an 800 number, anywhere you call it in the state, you'll get localized to that area via that area agency. So you get information from that area.
Are there any other ways of, because preventing falls is so important, but besides working on balance, any other things for seniors to know about as far as preventing that fall, that dreaded fall?
Sure, there are a number of things people can do, but I want to make one point first. There's been a very interesting study recently that looked at fall incidents and then also looked at people who had been active physically and their falls, because falling is a very common occurrence. They say a third or so people 65 and over fall every year. My guess is that's extremely underreported. Every time I ask a group of people of any age, has anybody fallen in the last year? Usually 75% of the people, yeah, I tripped on this, I slipped on the ice, so it's very, very common. 20 to 30% of those end up as a serious fall requiring hospitalization. And in addition to loss of independence, potential loss of independence, very expensive. The average cost of a fall that results in injury is $15,000. So lots of different impacts there for the person as well as for society. But where I was going with that is that the study that I was referring to looked at people who had fallen and the impact of physical activity. So you reduce your risk of falls with physical activity. But if you should fall, you reduce your risk of injury if you're more physically active. Mm-hmm. So there are two real benefits of staying active. And now to your question as far as other things that you can do, we talk about staying physically active, but it's really important to stay socially active and socially engaged, because social isolation can be a fall risk factor in of itself. Also, simple things around the home. Most of the falls people have are in or around the home. And so things that we can take for granted, that things like, do I leave one hand free when I'm walking down the stairs carrying groceries or walking up the stairs carrying groceries, even though it may mean making two trips. Well, a lot of us don't want to do that. Or we need to get these things done. When you get it done now, we're going to do it as fast as possible. Well, maybe, and in a class that we have called A Matter of Balance, we talk about that. You say, well, yeah, you can do that, but if we maybe do it a slightly different way, we'll reduce that risk of falls. Throw rugs in the house. What's the best thing you can do with a throw rug? Throw it. And so making sure you've got railings, in a position to be able to put in grab bars in the bathroom makes a big difference. Proper lighting makes a huge difference. And get up in the middle of the night. Do you have lighting that you're able to follow, or are you kind of trying to feel your way around to head to the bathroom? So there's many things that you can do around the home that are very simple, straightforward things that can reduce those risk of falls. And then you can also make major renovations as well, put in ramps and those different kinds of things. But many of the things we can do are not expensive, but it just takes stepping back for a second and saying, okay, do I have a cord that's running across my floor or in the corner that I sometimes step on? Maybe I could move that. So lots of things, picking up spills or clean up spills right away, and many things around the home that we really focus on as far as this.
As much as the trend has been, and I'm one of those persons who absolutely loves the lack of carpeting throughout my home, because I like hardwood floors or tile or whatever the floor surface may be. As you get even older, that pendulum swings back to where I'm thinking carpeting is a better idea than some of those harder floors might be, or slipperier.
Well, that's, and that really kind of depends on the carpet. So if it's a very low nap kind of carpet, that can be good. And certainly an unwaxed floor is better than a highly waxed floor. And certainly a kind of tile, you have to look at the tile. Some tiles can be very slippery when they're wet, and some tiles are not. So you kind of have to take those things into consideration. I don't think there's any real right and wrong. And there's always a judgment call.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'll give up a little of this because I have maybe I'll reduce my risk of fall by going this way a little bit, even though it's not my first choice, but my first choice definitely is to not fall and lose my independence. So
Can I say something? Aging is a mental attitude. Now on Facebook, there was a 97-year-old woman who talks about its energy. We're talking about really energy in a body. She teaches yoga at 97. Now, if you are eating well, if you have a passion for life, you're interested in life, you're still living. If you're out moving, you know, your agility is there. You start to fall, you catch yourself. Well, when you start to break down physically, and we're now getting knees replaced and hips replaced, et cetera, but it's, again, your energy is everything. It's your mental attitude, how you view life, and are you interacted? Isolation is a killer. It's a killer. And a lot of older people get isolated. Now, most people want to stay in their home. They don't want to go to an assisted living, and assisted living is really expensive today. In the old days, families took care of the older people. That's not working now. People are living longer, they're having dementia, they're having Alzheimer's like we've never seen before. But it really does boil down to your choice of living and whether you're engaged and whether you have passion for it. And you're going to live better, you're going to live longer, you're going to be a lot healthier. And this organization is just a gift, just a gift.
Well, thank you, Ed, and really that is so true because at any age, really,
Any age, yes.
are we engaged, you know, with others? Are we doing things that are worthwhile in our lives, whether it be family or spiritual or physical or whatever that might be, or are we not? You know, and so I think at any age we challenge ourselves to really look for that. I say look for the energy and, you know, sort of embrace that. But that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, one of the programs that we offer is called Living Well with Chronic Conditions, and another one's called Living Well with Diabetes. Well, a lot of that is around accepting the fact that I may have a chronic condition, or probably multiple chronic conditions. 68% of the people 65 and older have at least one chronic condition. 80% of the people 65 and older have at least one chronic condition. 68% have two or more.
Could you, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Could you give us an example of a couple chronic conditions? What are we speaking of
High
here?
blood pressure, COPD, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes, arthritis. 27% of the people 65 and older in this country have diabetes, and a large percentage of those are type 2 diabetes, which is something that we can do something about. So those are typical chronic conditions. Kidney disease, and so given the fact that I may have chronic conditions, then this workshop starts on what do I do about it? You know, how do I take control over the things I have control over? You know, how do I action plan for the week? How do I work effectively with my healthcare professional? How do I get a good night's sleep? How do I eat well? How do I manage my difficult emotions that might come out of having this? And so it's a very positive, action-oriented, forward-looking workshop that really has people thinking and then making choices to live differently, even though they may start out feeling like, well, my chronic conditions have me. And then by the end of the workshop, I said, yeah, I may have these multiple chronic conditions, but this is how I'm going to live life fully, and this is how I'm going to move ahead.
I know for a lot of older people, and I certainly am one of them, you get kind of set in your ways and you don't want to change. And some of the things that you're speaking of for a lot of people would require them to change, maybe dramatically, their lifestyle when they don't want to do what would probably be the best thing for them. And I'm speaking of myself also. What ways can you bring someone around other than like scare tactics? I suppose it'd be one, this will happen if you don't do this. What sort of techniques are out there to get someone to see the sense of maybe making some adjustments in life.
Yeah, he took up music when you retired. You started writing books when you retired. I mean, you know, I am a performer.
I started volunteering.
Exactly. I mean, it's a really an opening to a new life. And it's a great gift.
Well, and Ed, I think that is a great point, because one of the ways is by people seeing other people do this, start new things, do new things in their lives that make a difference. So that is one main way. But also, I think I always start from the standpoint that it's everybody's life to live, and everybody has their choices to make. And if they choose not to make changes, then that's perfectly their right to not make changes. And I'm not going to stand around and tell people you ought to do this and you ought to do that. What's really neat about the workshop-oriented programs that we have is you have people with similar kind of concerns. For example, in a matter of balance class, that's a workshop where everybody who comes has some level of concern about falling. Not sure that they want to do anything about it, or they might. But in sharing those concerns with each other, oh, did you really? You have? Oh, yeah. So A, I'm not alone. B, we do a lot of generation of ideas, of suggestions and solutions to problems. And the interesting thing is that the solutions come from the group, not from the facilitators, leading the group. And so it's that sharing of information, realizing people have common concerns, and people hearing other people voice those and voice solutions as well. Similarly, we're living well with chronic conditions. Hearing other people have concerns. They may have different chronic conditions, but they have similar concerns, impacted the same way, and that they're making changes. In both cases, we do what we call action planning. We take something small, something that somebody would like to accomplish in the Living Well with Chronic Conditions class, something that somebody would like to accomplish between this week and next. Something, it could be calling a friend, it could be walking down the street and back, it could be trying a different food, it could be anything that the person wants to do, not something that somebody's saying you ought to do. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about that the next week. How did it go? Oh, you accomplished it, great. Oh, they had obstacles, what were those? Oh, did anybody else ever have that situation where you had an obstacle? Any ideas of what you might have done? So I think it's a lot to do with community and sharing and seeing what other people are doing, as well as hearing that other folks have the same kind of concerns that you do, and there are things that you can do. Not that it's hopeless.
Well, Dave, we've run out of time. And thank you so much for being on the show today. This is so enlightening. I think we have more questions. Ed, you were going to have another question too. So one of these times you should come back on the show and we can continue this conversation. But thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you. Can I just say one more word?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we have a whole new initiative and statewide. It's called Healthy Living as You Age. And we're really trying to expand all of the offerings throughout the state as well as the metro area. So we hope to be partnering with healthcare providers, healthcare plans, and community organizations to really make a lot of these opportunities more available to many more people throughout the state. And we're very, very excited about that.
Oh, thanks very much. And Ed and Midge and Jeff, thank you all for being here with me today. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.